Have you ever looked at your partner and thought, whoa, we have nothing in common anymore. The things that you used to love doing together have faded. Maybe your hobbies have changed and now you barely hang out, at least not in the way that you used to. Instead of deep conversations, going to gigs or music festivals or out to nice restaurants, your conversations revolve around schedules and bills, then who's picking up groceries, or simply feeling too tired to do anything, and suddenly you realize you're more like housemates than best friends. I'm Vakakis. I am a couples therapist, mental health and relationship educator, and your host of This Complex Life. And in today's episode, I want to talk about why friendship is an important part of a strong, lasting relationship and what happens when it starts to fade. I'll talk a little bit about why couples drift apart, some of the subtle signs that your relationship is missing a true friendship, and most importantly, some tools and tips on how to rekindle that and bring it back. From reigniting curiosity and fun to navigating conflict as teammates rather than opponents, this conversation is all about strengthening your connection in a meaningful way. So if you've ever wondered, where did our spark go? This episode is for you. So let's get into it. Friendships matter in romantic relationships, and a strong friendship can create emotional safety, trust, and mutual respect. And there is a lot of evidence to tell us that being in a relationship, in a good relationship, can actually extend our life expectancy. And there's all this data as well around loneliness and friendships in general. And I will talk about that in another episode. I've got a whole bunch of stuff coming up about adult friendships. But I want to talk about couples at this point. And couples who describe their partner as their best friend or a close friend tend to have longer, happier relationships. And so we know that friendship in a relationship isn't just about liking the same things. It's actually about feeling truly seen and understood. And one of the things that I hear people say that they don't have the same shared interests anymore. And so they feel like that's it. It's over. We're not compatible. And the truth is interests evolve and people change and they grow and they're interested in new things. And it's important to recognize that and have a conversation about what are your ways of connecting now. So let's say you used to go and watch, the football together, and maybe now you have children and that's not something that you can do as easily. And your partner might be asking, let's go to the footy. You're like, look, I can't, or it's too hard to wrangle kids or get a babysitter. And then they feel defeated. They might not be saying what they really want, which is, I want to spend time with you and I want to hang out. The association was with football and hanging out, and then that can feel like a lot of rejection. And so might have missed a bid for connection in that. And there's another episode on bids for connection. You can go through the back catalogue and check that out. So it's important to really understand what is it that that person is asking for. So one of the things we do, and I always laugh at humans, we're such interesting creatures. We might say what we really want as a question to the other person because it feels really awkward and uncomfortable. So let's say I might really want to go out on a Friday night. And instead of saying to my partner, hey, let's go out Friday night, let's go into the city, I can find a nice restaurant or we can, walk around and see what's interesting, go have a drink, maybe go for a walk in the Botanic Gardens, whatever the thing is. Instead of saying that, I might say, you want to go out Friday night? And they might be like, yeah, no. And so I might feel really rejected at that, but I haven't made it clear to them that it's something I want to do. And I see these conversations happen all the time where we really want our partner to read between the lines and really understand what we're trying to say, but we don't really say it, but we're hoping we say it. Or we go into this dance where we think that that's what they might want and they say yes because they think that that's what we might want, and you both end up doing something that neither of you want to do. So it's really important to try and recognize when you want to connect, how you go about doing that, and try and be clear. So if you're saying, hey, we've had a long week and I want to do something just fun and easy, let's go to the city and grab a bite to eat and let's just hang out, no talk about groceries and bills and the dog's vet bill or the kids or whatever. And if your partner's like, that sounds great, but I'm so pooped, could we do something local instead? Then you've got a starting point. Then that's so much richer. Or they might say, that sounds amazing. All I want to do is order pizza and watch a movie. Could we do it Saturday night? So then you have a bit of a dialogue. So it's really helpful to start to think about how do we talk about what we want in hanging out? How do we communicate that? And is our partner trying to tell us something when they're dropping these little hints of, do you want to go to the movies or do you want to go do this? Are they wanting to hang out? Are they trying to keep that friendship alive and going? So think about that for yourself, and how clear are you in asking what you want to do? And I remember working with someone, and I had to laugh, and we laughed about it when we realized this was the pattern. But when they wanted to hang out, this was in a friendship situation, but I think it's really helpful and telling for relationships. Instead of saying, hey, I'd like to see you, can I see you on the weekend? They might say like, hey, I might be in the area on Saturday. Let me know if you're free. And the other person's like, yeah, cool. And would never contact them back, because they were like, it probably in their mind would be thinking, well, they'll let me know when they're in the area, and when they message me, then I'll free. And the other person's like, well, if they're free, they would message me and then I would be in the area to hang out. And so this whole thing was just lost in communication, or lack of communication. So that's an important one to think about. And brainstorm ideas, like, especially if you met when you were younger, like, hobbies change and grow and evolve, and it's not realistic to say, well, you used to love this and now you don't love this anymore, and well, then that's it, it's over. You can find new ways of connecting. And if you were to put all the things that you like to do down on a piece of paper, you might have, if it's a beautiful Venn diagram, 2 circles, there'd be an intersection point. There would be a point of things that you're happy to do together. It's a really helpful activity. Maybe you actually brainstorm them, or you get a list of cards that, give you prompts, or write it on Post-it notes, but actually thinking, well, we don't have the same hobbies anymore, and that's fine, or we're time poor, or we're all these other things. How do we actually find a way to connect? And how can we keep that friendship alive? And that's about also having fun. And it doesn't have to always be spontaneous. It can be planned fun. It can be planned activities, but it takes effort. And I'll talk a little bit about effort in just a moment. It's important to find ways to keep that friendship alive. So it's about, mutual support and not having identical hobbies. You might not have any hobbies that's the same, and that doesn't mean you can't be really great friends. So how do you know if your relationship is missing friendship? Some of the ways that I see this show up in the work that I do is conversations start to feel transactional or only about logistics. Did you pay the bill? Have you taken the dog to the vet? Did you pick up dinner on your way home? It's transactional. It's about the stuff that needs to get done. There might be not as much laughter or having fun like you used to. It could also be that there's a lack of emotional support. So you're not turning to each other for comfort. And then you just have this vibe, like you feel more like your ships in the night and your housemates rather than partners, and everything feels very perfunctory. So one of the common myths I get around this is, if we really loved each other, friendship would come naturally. And this is such a myth in so many areas of relationship, that if they XYZ, it should just come easily, or it should just happen. No, none of this just shoulds. It takes effort. All relationships require effort to maintain connection. And sometimes they might require loads more effort, and sometimes a little bit of effort, but they all require effort. The grass isn't greener on the other side. The grass is greener where you water it. So all friendships take effort. That is showing up, it's making time, it's being supportive and reflecting on things. It takes effort in one way, shape or form. It needs to take effort, and that's okay. That's totally fine. But thinking that it should just work without effort or without watering that garden, it's just not going to happen. So I want you to think about, when was the last time you and your partner genuinely enjoyed each other's company? What were the ingredients? What was happening then? Because that might be a really good starting point of, wow, this was the last time we actually had fun. Okay, what can we replicate about that? And sometimes they can be in the most unusual moments of, we don't have them as often now. We've got so much technology, but, I remember sometimes having blackouts and, you light candles and you play board games and the internet was out, but now, phones and whatever, or maybe it's camping. There might be times where you think we had fun in those moments where distractions were taken away or technology was taken away, or, we tried something new and it went terrible. Maybe you tried kayaking and it capsized and ended up flailing about. Finding the last time that you can remember, and let's see what it takes to bring some of that back into a future experience. Because life stresses happen, and work, kids, routine, it can cause couples to lose sight of their sense of playfulness. And I think that's an important part of a relationship. And couples can drift apart and lose friendships. And this is quite heartbreaking. I see so many couples in my work who have beautiful histories and they have such deep care for each other, and there's something missing. They have a piece that they feel they long for, and routine is taken over and fun gets deprioritized, and stress makes partners retreat. Sometimes it can make that person pull away rather than lean on you. And so it's important to keep on top of this, because if we're wanting something and we're not getting that need met and we're not speaking about it, we're not unpacking it, small resentments can build up. And over time, this can erode the relationship. Whether it's a lack of curiosity, especially just thinking, we've been together so long, we just know each other, and not updating that, not being more curious and asking questions that you've never asked before, and really digging into that person's life and who they are as a person can really help that friendship. Sometimes I hear, if we really were meant to be, it wouldn't just happen. We wouldn't have to work at it at all. And kind of similar to the earlier comment around it should just happen. No, it doesn't just happen. These things take effort, and even the strongest relationship requires maintenance and showing up, and it's an action. It's not just a role that you get. You're like, cool, you're my partner and therefore my friend, and then nothing else is required. It is consistently showing up and doing what it needs to be done to keep that friendship alive. So if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, okay, there's a little bit of room for improvement here, I can see where we might need to do a bit of extra work. How do we get started? So the first is starting to, again, and these are some of the things that I do in my work with couples and some of the things that I've seen over time. It's bring back curiosity. That's the easiest one. That can start with today, right now, when you get home. You can ask a deeper question, beyond the daily logistics. So that could be, instead of saying, how was work? Or, you maybe say, how was work? And then you might say, what's the biggest challenge you faced this week? Or, I've noticed you worked really hard on that project. What does that really mean to you? It's digging in a little bit deeper, and it's asking open-ended questions. So an open-ended question is something that doesn't require a yes or no. It really expands the conversation. So you can be curious. That's something that you can do straight away. The next one is to prioritize fun. Low pressure, enjoyable activities together. Not just date nights, which you should do as well. And date nights don't have to be some big fancy go out for dinner. It could be at home, a cheese board, a cup of tea, a glass of wine, whatever you do. It's an intentional moment of time that you allocate to spend together. And it can look in a number of different ways. But the small the low pressure, enjoyable activities are small shared experiences. And that can be a game of Uno or Jenga or painting, or it could be a hit of tennis at the park, or have a swing on the monkey bars. It could be anything. It's bringing back a little bit of playfulness, Ping pong. I know the park near me has one of those free ping pong tables, and I've bought rackets and a ball. Haven't used them in a while. Maybe I should. Maybe I will after this. So it's just creating some opportunities to bring back some small enjoyable activities together, and don't underestimate the power of 10 or 15 minutes. If you do that a couple of times a week, by the end of the month, it's a couple of extra hours of something enjoyable and fun and de-stressing that you can do together. The next one is to show appreciation. Make an effort to notice, and the key here is verbalize what you admire about your partner with an example. I appreciate how thoughtful you were to pack me my lunch. I love it when you do that. It makes me feel really cared for. Okay, so show appreciation and verbalize it. And if you're wanting your partner to do that for you, maybe ask for that as well. So instead of cracking and saying, hey, I never feel appreciated, you don't appreciate me, might be saying, is there anything, or I listened to this podcast and, showing appreciation was one of the things that we're talking about. I want to share something I appreciate about you. Could you also think of something about me? You could just tell them what it is you want to hear. It's totally okay. It doesn't just have to come spontaneously and naturally. We're not built with knowing all of these things. Another tip, and this is hard if you're not naturally a lighthearted person, then this might be tricky, but one of the tips is to lighten up. Is how do you inject humor into your interactions and not take things too seriously? I see parents do this really well for kids. They might make pancakes with like a smiley face, or they might put tomato sauce on a pie and make a little kind of picture or something. You know, they do these really fun, cute, whimsical things for kids and not for their partners. And so how can we bring back some humor? Not practical jokes or pranks, because I think a lot of people, especially when they're stressed, and if this is not the culture of your relationship, that's going to feel so insensitive. It's thinking of ways how do you lighten things up a little bit? Check in emotionally, create a space for real conversation. So maybe you need to start with some of the earlier tips. And if you've already got some of those going, amazing. Let's add in the real deep conversations. And you might do that walking. It might be on a weekend away. It could be on a Sunday morning. I'd avoid doing this when you're at your most pooped for the week. If you're exhausted come Friday and that's when you want, you've scheduled to try and have a deep conversation, or if you've listened to early episodes and, you're having that State of the Union meeting, that's going to be so hard. Like, you don't want to do the thing that's maybe really important or really difficult or unnatural for you anyway at a time when you have the least amount of energy. So picking the right time to prioritize that conversation. And there are some prompts you can use. There's the Gottman card deck that has, it's an app on your phone, and that's got a whole list of like date questions and opportunities for deeper connection. Esther Perel's got a board game which has some really beautiful questions. There's some really cool question decks on the School of Life website. I think there's one called Relationship Reboot. There's ones about intimacy. There's a whole bunch of stuff. So you don't have to do this alone. If this doesn't come naturally to you and you're like, I don't know what kinds of questions to ask, there's heaps out there. Totally fine. And so I want to wrap this up with this myth: effort means something's wrong. It's not the case. Effort means you care. If you're taking the time and you're thinking about this and you're figuring out how to try something new and experiment, it shows that you care. It doesn't mean that something's wrong. So if you want to start right now, maybe pause this episode and send your partner a text that says something you appreciate about them. Or maybe you suggest an idea of, hey, I was listening to a podcast and it inspired me to think of something fun to do. So can we pick, time on the weekend and I'm going to plan something fun for us. It can be, you can take a small step right now if you want. The invitation's there. So before we wrap up, I want to also talk about navigating conflict. And I've had episodes about conflict before, and it definitely won't be the last, because conflict comes up in any relationship and it doesn't matter the type of relationship, it comes up. So how do we navigate conflict as friends, not as enemies? And I'm not going to go into it in a great amount of detail. If you want to hear more, you can check out the episode on that. But we want to, some of the key summaries of some of those conversations I've had around conflict and fighting is good friends, in a healthy relationship, assume good intent. So how can you bring that mindset into these conversations? How can you assume that your partner had good intentions? It might not be something you understand. It might not be what you would have done, but for them, they had a good intention, or at least they didn't intend it to go badly. So going into conversations, into conflict with an open mind that they probably didn't plan on it having the impact it did on you. The next point in this is around winning and losing. And conflict, it's not about winning. If you're going into it to win, that's not going to be great for a relationship. So we want to go in with curiosity and to understand each other, not to interject, not to say who did what when. It's tell me more about what that meant to you. Tell me more about your perspective. It's coming in that with curiosity and using humor. And again, with sensitivity, because if you're using humor when someone's telling you something really important and really painful, that's going to be really insensitive. But you can use humor to diffuse tension. And remember, you're on the same team. It's such a myth that healthy couples don't fight. I mean, it's total crap. Conflict is normal. We all have conflict. Any two bodies and brains together will have some sort of conflict. It's how you handle it that really matters. So you can talk about things in a way, some gentle startup kind of conversation starters or ways to navigate this is, things like help me understand instead of you always, ask, what can we do different here? Or what would you need from me? If you listen to this and you want to have a conversation with your partner, maybe ask them saying, how do you feel we go resolving conflict? Is there anything that we could do different? And ask yourself, how do you and your partner resolve conflict? Is it collaborative or does it feel like a battle? Because that might be an area that you can do a bit of work on. So friendship isn't just a nice to have in relationships. It is part of the foundation of trust and intimacy and lasting connection. And yes, it takes work. But the good news, the work isn't about grand gestures or forcing common interests. It's about showing up, staying curious, and making space for joy and connection in everyday moments. So I hope to give you some ideas and some tips and tricks. And if you want to reach out and let me know what you do to maintain friendship, I'd love to hear from you. So I leave you with the invitation. What's the one small thing you can do today to bring a little more friendship back into your relationship? Give it a go and see what changes. Thank you for listening. To keep the conversation going, head on over to Instagram or LinkedIn and follow me. If you'd like to keep updated with episodes and other interesting things happening in mental health, join my weekly This Complex Life newsletter, where I'll share tools, tips and insight. There's a link in the show notes. Got a question you want answered? Shoot me an email or a DM. I'd love to hear from you. And if you enjoy the show, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a rating and a review. It helps other people find the podcast.